How you doing, guys? Big Mate Dan School here again today, back once again with another episode of my Conquest series for you. Today, I'm taking a look at issue 33. First off, you may be wondering why this video is a little bit later than it has been recently. All it is, I've had a cold, and yesterday, when I'd normally record the video, unfortunately I couldn't stop myself coughing for long enough to record a video. So instead of chopping it up and having loads of choppy editing, which I often do anyway, I figured I'd leave it a day and then see if I'm any better. I'm not coughing quite so much today, so here we go. On with the review for issue 33. First off, what do we get inside issue 33? We get these, the thermic plasma conduits. Now, these are a 22, or half of, I should say, a £22.50 kit from Games Workshop. And so that's the same value as last week's issue. However, when you look at the actual raw materials, the cost in raw materials of this has got to be higher than this, surely. The size difference is ridiculous. This is like, if you just pop that there like that, that's roughly, that's about 2/8 or a quarter of the plastic that's in that. So the cost is relative, really. It depends what GW you're charging for each kit. And they're only charging $22.50 for a kit with 2 of these in. Now, I'm pretty sure this is half of a kit. Correct me if I'm wrong there, but I'm pretty sure this is half of what you'd normally get in the thermic plasma conduits box. Because I think you normally get 6 long pipes and you've only got 3 long sections of pipe in here. And I think you get 2 of them. So, like I said, correct me if I'm wrong in the comments below, but I think I'm spot on with that. So that's £11.75. So it's an okay value issue, but it's not as valuable when you look at the saving you're making from Games Workshop when compared to last week's issue. However, as always, I like to add, I think terrain is massively valuable and adds so much to your battlefield. So, what do we get in the issue? Lovely cover, as always, with some very nicely painted thermic plasma conduits. Space Marine Chapter Masters inside, painting terrain and barricades in your games. Barricades in your games. Let's click over to the first page though, see what's inside. So first off, it starts with Chapter Masters. And the Chapter Masters section covers basically what a Chapter Master is, what the Chapter Master's role is, and how the Chapter Masters are elected. So flicking over to the next page, it then talks about a few specific Chapter Masters and a few differences between various Space Marine chapters, fine little differences. So Pedro Cantor of the Crimson Fists, he became Chapter Master when there were very few Crimson Fists left after a massive battle with the Orcs at Rindsworld, and there was a monastery, fortress monastery that was destroyed. So he was the most eligible candidate left in the Crimson Fist. I think they were down to like a handful of Marines. I'm not entirely sure. I know there's viewers of some of my videos that are Crimson Fist players, so they'll be able to tell you more. So maybe check out the comments below if you're interested in more, or search somewhere like Lexicanum as well. And yeah, so the Crimson Fists were nearly wiped out, and then Pedro Cantor got elected to become the Chapter Master. Then it goes on to High Marshal Helbrecht of the Black Templars. Now, High Marshal isn't the title Chapter Master, is it? So, just an obvious difference there in the various chapters. They have Marshals and High Marshals rather than Chapter Masters and Captains. I think they have Marshals instead of Captains. I'm assuming so. Maybe I'm wrong. Correct me in the comments below. And then Cave on Strike of the Raven Guard. Now, Cave on Strike of the Raven Guard is someone who I think a lot of people thought he was the Chapter Master for years, but it's only recently in the lore in the past couple of years that he's been made Chapter Master. I think it was when there was the last version of Kill Team possibly, and there was a couple of strike forces, a Tau strike force, and Tau infiltration cadre, and something like a Space Marine stealth something, I don't know. There was a couple of box sets. And it was that campaign, I think, that Cave on Strike eventually became Chapter Master of the Raven Guard, replacing the previous Chapter Master, Corv on Severax, who was killed in that campaign. Turning over again to the next page, it goes on to talk about Honour Guard, and what the Honour Guard are, the role they play. So they are elite infantry, and they often play the role of bodyguard to the chapter master, and the duties are to protect command assets of protect command assets and dual elite enemies. So they're basically veterans of many years of warfare, many centuries in some cases of warfare. And on the next page it goes on to talk about the Victrix Guard, who are the Honour Guard of the Ultramarines. More often than not, they are with Marneus Calgar, the chapter master of the Ultramarines. They theoretically could protect anyone in chapter command, but Rabute Gilliman doesn't really need a bodyguard because he's so much a better fighter than most of the opponents he faces. But they will protect the likes of Rabute Gilliman, the Primarch, from time to time. When they're fielded with someone like Rabute Gilliman, they'd be more seen as an honour guard, more seen as a ceremonial role than actual bodyguard to the Primarch, although they will, of course, like any Ultramarines, lay down their lives for the Primarch. But yeah, that's just to give you a little bit of an idea of what the Honour Guard do and the tasks they perform in the chapter. On to the next page, it talks about cities of the Imperium and how they're horrible places to live. I've spoken in previous issues, when I've been reviewing previous issues, and I've hinted that the Imperium of Man is a terrible place to be and live, and it's things like this that make me think that. It's law like this that make me think that. You know, there's millions of Imperial citizens, billions even, spread across the galaxy, living on these hive worlds, on these manufactorum worlds, these factory worlds, some agri worlds, and they're just, all they do, they wake up in the morning, they toil, they earn a living, they might be a member of a gang, something like that. It's all like proper shady, grim society. There's no real route for advancement unless you're really good at politicking your way out of things. There's no route to gain a fortune. It's a society that doesn't reward you for being good at something. Not often, anyway. There are certain things like if you're really good at fighting, you might be selected to join a Space Marine chapter and become a Space Marine, but then you might die in the process as well. So is that really a reward? I don't know. So it's like Imperial society, human society in the 41st millennium. It's horrible. Going on to the next page, we've got some fantastic artwork here showing the trudgery and toil of human society again. And then it says in this little caption, "A life of toil and duty is blessed indeed. The reward for such service is death, the final gift." So that's the final gift the Imperium gives you, death. And that's your respite, if you like, from the toil and trudgery of being an Imperial citizen. That's probably the least grim that it gets in the 41st millennium in the Imperium of Man. On to the next page, we've got a fantastic short story, a really exciting short story about the Blood Angels, in particular about Stormraven gunship delivering troops into battle, and a few little tricks up its sleeve. You can learn more about that when you get the issue yourself. It's an exciting story, so I recommend you check it out. Thermic plasma conduits, onto the next page, how to build them. Well, you get the two pictures as standard on the first page, flicking over. We've got 4 pages by the looks of it of how to build thermic plasma conduits. It's really simple. You get half of it, you get the other half of it, you glue it together. You get all the bits that match up, and it's all numbered for you as always. Nice simple build guide, really clear as well, because they do spread it out over 4 pages. I said in the past they could condense them a little more, but I think they like to keep it clear for you, as clear as possible, and if they condensed it, then it might not be as clear. So spread out over 4 pages, it's nice and simple for you to see. Onto the how to paint thermic plasma conduits. It's a really simple paint guide. This paint guide is only 4 pages as well. When you consider how simple it was to build the thermic plasma conduits, painting them you'd have thought maybe will take more than 4 pages, but it doesn't. It's a really simple paint job, to be fair though. You're just whacking on your base coat of lead belcher, then you're using your Nuln Oil to shade all the recesses. Well, it's an all-over wash of Nuln Oil, but it'll settle into the recesses. And it'll dirty up the pipework overall, so it won't look like brand spanking new pipe work. And you don't want it to, because it's supposed to be set up on like the ruins of the battle map that we've got in and amongst the ruins. So you don't want it to look brand spanking new like it's just been installed, especially when some of it's been blown off. So on to the next page. This is the play section. Barricades and conduits. Thermic plasma conduits run through many Imperial cities, distributing energy to factories, arms depots and other major military production sites. In this game, these pipes can be used as cover for your models, but the plasma energy that flows through them can make them potentially deadly. So it's a dual effect. You can cower behind these and take cover behind these from enemy fire. However, on a save of a 7+, I think, then there's a chance your unit could take a mortal wound, your unit that's in cover behind them. Interestingly, I don't know, but I know when 8th edition came out, they didn't have cover rules that they used to have. They didn't have cover rules like this. It used to be if there was a piece of intervening terrain, you could gain cover from that. But then they didn't have these cover rules when 8th edition first came out. I may be wrong here, but I don't think they've introduced them either in anything like chapter approved. Correct me if I'm wrong, because I didn't get the first chapter approved 2018, I think. I didn't get that. So they may have done some more in-depth rules for using things like, I was going to say Promethean relay pipes, but plasma conduits for cover. They may have, they may not have. Just let me know in the comments below if you've got any more information on that. I'm not a massively competitive player, so I don't tend to buy things like chapter approved. It may just be that the rules for cover come in the thermic plasma conduits themselves, in the box sets themselves, just to give you an added little dimension to your game, as this does in here. And it explains basically a few things. So you can hide a unit behind the thermic plasma conduits, but they're not completely out of sight, unless they're a particularly small unit, maybe like a Tau Pathfinder. Anyway, if your unit is obscured and within 1 inch of that thermic plasma conduit, then they get and the whole unit has to be within 1 inch of it, and the whole unit has to be obscured by it. So if you've got a unit of 10 models, it's going to be a bit tricky. If you've got 5 models in a unit, let's say, it's going to be a bit easier, so you're likely to be able to benefit from cover. You will basically get a +1 to your saving throw. So if you're a Space Marine player, that effectively means you've got a 2-up save. It doesn't actually mean that. It means you only have to roll a 2 on the dice, and then you get a +1, makes it a 3. And if you are fighting over, if you want to charge a unit that's hiding behind a thermic plasma conduit, instead of having to be within 1 inch of the unit you're charging, you only have to be within 2 inches. It's to represent basically when you're charging, you might leap up onto the thermic plasma conduit to attack the other player's unit. But to do that, place your models on top, they might fall off and get damaged. So there is a risk, like I said, to hiding behind the thermic plasma conduits. There's a rule here called hazardous cover. Roll a d6 every time you make a saving throw of 7+. Usually a roll of 6 +1 for being in cover. So you add 1 to your saving roll, and that's how you get to a 7+. For every model within 3 inches of a terrain feature with this ability in the shooting phase, on a 1, the model's unit suffers 1 mortal wound. So if you roll a 6 for your cover save, for your saving throw for the unit that's been shot at, if you roll a 6, then that becomes a 7, meaning you might then suffer a mortal wound. What you do, you roll the d6 again, and on a roll of 1, you suffer a mortal wound. But you do that for every unit within 3 inches of that piece of cover. And then on the next page, it talks about conduits in play, and it gives us some nice diagrams. You'll see them up here, with the green area marking the 1 inch distance from the thermic plasma conduit. And then it shows you in example 2, the Plague Marines making the save. 1 fails to make the save. The middle one rolls a 2 when he'd normally need a 3, but he gets the +1 from the cover, so it becomes a 3. And then the last one rolls a 6, which leads to what we've just discussed on the previous page, the hazardous terrain rules, hazardous cover rules. So then he has a chance of taking a mortal wound. And then in example 3,
it gives us the fight phase basically in that example, so they can fight each other despite the fact that they are 2 inches or almost 2 inches away from each other. They are within 2 inches of each other, and that's what the green area represents on that one. On to the mission briefing. I'm not going to read this one out because, as you can tell, my voice is shot. But it's basically protect the pipeline is the mission, as you can see here. The idea is the Space Marine players are trying to make sure the Death Guard don't destroy any more of the thermic plasma conduits than they already have done. You'll notice on this terrain here, there's a couple of areas here and here that have the sort of, it's like the pipe's been blown up. Now, it's really nice that in the magazine they're giving us a scenario that says, it runs you through it and it says the Death Guard have already destroyed some of the thermic plasma conduits, and they can represent that really well because they are destroyed pipelines. So they represent that, and it's tying the scenario here into the terrain feature that we're getting in this week's issue, which is really nice. And then on to the mission, Drain the Power. It talks about 3 objectives here, and you'll notice in the last box, the victory conditions box, it mentions 4 objectives. It says in the second sentence here, if one player controls 4 objectives, they score 3 victory points instead. However, on the map they've only marked out 3 objectives. I'd play it for 3 objectives because on the actual map, the other piece that's not marked out is really close to the biggest objective in the top left corner here. And it's because it's that close, I just count that as one big objective. So I'd say 3 objectives rather than 4 that it says in that box there. The army's involved in this one. I'll talk you through that as always. We get 5 Plague Marines, 12 Poxwalkers, Foul Blightspawn, Tainted Cohort, Mephitic Blight Hauler, and the Space Marine side consists of 5 Intercessors, 2 Hellblasters, 5 Reavers, Primaris Librarian, and a Redemptor Dreadnought. The aim of the game is to gain victory points by holding on to each objective each turn. The game lasts 5 battle rounds. If you control more objectives than your opponent, each turn you control more objectives, you gain 1 victory point. If you hold all 3, you gain 3 victory points. Or it does say you hold all 4, like I mentioned earlier, but there aren't 4 objectives marked on the map, so I just play it as 3. Both players score 1 victory point for each enemy eliminated each turn, and the game lasts 5 battle rounds, like I said, so it's a nice and simple one. On to the back page, what do we get in next week's issue? So next week, as I mentioned last week, we get some Death Guard characters, which is really nice. I'm not sure, I don't think there's any extra models on this sprue. I think it is just the 3 Death Guard characters. And then the following week we get, it's the Primaris Chaplain, which is a really nice model in my opinion. Some people says it looks like he's holding up a pimp stick, but I really like that model. It's the dark look to it, it's the skeletons that adorn the armour, the skull mask and everything. I really like the Chaplain model. I really like the role the Chaplain's played in the Horus Heresy, and I building an Imperial Fist chapter. I like the idea of having chaplains but no librarians or fewer librarians, because during the Horus Heresy, Rogel Dawn was really strict when the chaplains came into being. The chaplains were basically tasked with ensuring the Emperor's edict at Nicaea wasn't broken. The edict of Nicaea prevented chapters from employing their psychers, their librarians. So what Rogel Dawn did during that time was he locked away his librarians, so they weren't tempted to use their powers on the battlefield. Guilliman just redistributed them throughout the Legion and trusted them not to use their powers, and different legions did different things, like the Thousand Sons, for example, another one of my favourite Space Marine legions. They basically ignored the edicts. They didn't completely, they tried to live by it, but the Thousand Sons are so psychically gifted that the temptation became too great. They saw no reason they shouldn't use all of the gifts that they had to try and defeat the enemies of the Imperium, and that led to their downfall. So, that's all we've got for you this week, guys. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you on the battlefield.